It is Midday Live. Lance Reed and Dr. Drew. 800-222-5222 is our phone number. We, of course, have been talking about the, beg your pardon, the selective shadow banning that has been, that our previous callers told us they were subjected to and has been alleged. And now we have a $250 million lawsuit in that regard. We are talking today to John M. Phillips, attorney and litigator. You can follow him at floridajustice.com, also on Twitter, at John Phillips. Mr. Phillips, tell us about the suit.
Hey, Dr. Drew, how you feeling?
I've got this thing, obviously, and it's a little bit challenging.
Make me talk as much as you can.
All right, let's do it.
So our congressman has filed a lawsuit, and you and I have met through Darren Kavanaugh on the TV side years ago.
Yes.
I think we've talked about how the more money you put in the actual complaint, probably the more frivolous that it sometimes tends to be, because you generally don't put a dollar amount. You just do a jurisdictional amount saying, we'll get there, let the jury decide. But, they went for the whopping $250 million, sued Liz Mayer, her company, and then 2 Twitter accounts, which is going to be kind of precedent setting, because this isn't a person, place, or thing with assets. They literally sued the Twitter account. So he needs to kind of bust through and see who owns the Twitter account or who's posting and sue them directly. But it alleges a host of things, from conspiracy to defamation to holding him in a false light, and includes graphics that are awful. I mean, X-rated stuff.
What? Crazy.
There's the human centipede graphic. Apparently was done in a meme.
Oh, nice.
Is located within the complaint, so it's a fun read.
Well, is the complaint about the slander, or is it about the shadow banning, or both?
It mentions, so it is a novel on the history of Twitter, and gets into Twitter's alleged shadow banning of everything GOP. And so it does get into that, but the main complaints aren't, they're saying Twitter's a conspiracy for sure, but the main thing, and they're the number one defendant, but the main thing that he gets into that people are talking about is Twitter, are malicious tweets defamatory? And that's the new question. We represent Omarosa in her NDA claim against or by Trump, and we know Stormy and Trump had the whole defamation case that turned out in President Trump's favor. But it's how seriously are we taking Twitter is the new question.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Because I think any of us that have a public profile have horrible stuff said about us all the time. Are you going to be setting a standard for new guidelines, do you think?
We'll see. So the attorney that filed the lawsuit, a guy named Stephen Biss, has been disbarred for a year one time and suspended and admonished another time. So it's a guy with a little bit of a track record, but it's certainly a novel theory. I had to laugh as soon as I saw that he sued, Devin Nunes' cow. The preposterous nature of suing a cow is just, Twitter cow is funny. Of course, it's not a Twitter cow. It's somebody behind it. But the people that I've talked to, in Virginia doesn't have, California has, and Texas has slap laws. They'll pop somebody for a frivolous complaint affirmatively. And Virginia doesn't have that. And this was filed in state court in Virginia. The defendants could remove it to federal court, but that's where Liz Mayer was, so that's where they filed it. It's got challenges for sure.
What's your prediction is going to happen?
Motion to dismiss will be filed, and if not, remove it to federal court, and then a federal judge will probably slap it out of there.
What about the First Amendment issues around the shadow banning?
The shadow ban. So he's got to prove damages related to any claim, and I get it from the defamation. Anybody can say, the Uber stuff. Okay, so because of the way I'm smeared on social media, now I can't even get an Uber. Well, what caused it? We've got to show damages, but we've got to show causation. What did Twitter do or not do? And you've almost got a little bit of inconsistency with if Twitter's shadow ban. I guess the theory is Twitter's shadow banning him, so he can't defend himself, and so the only Devin Nunes stuff out there is by the Twitter handle Devin Nunes' mom and Devin Nunes' cow. But it's all done. I mean, there's some nasty stuff out there. I know. I was listening when you referenced my buddy, the West Coast John Phillips.
Yes.
And when West Coast John Phillips goes on CNN and talks Trump, I'm East Coast John Phillips. I get hammered
because people think you're him.
Because I'm at John Phillips. I got the good one.
Right.
And so he's at Johnny Don't Like. And so
right.
I get hammered with stuff, and I'm on the kind of middle to over the. I represent Omarosa, for crying out loud. So of course people hammer me and hammer her, but you at the end of the day, we got work to do, and it's not. I'd ask you, is it necessarily psychologically stable to litigate every problem we have?
Well, I for sure think that's insane. Yeah. It's almost definition of insanity. We're talking to John M. Phillips, not our John Phillips. You can follow this John Phillips at John Phillips. He got the good one, as he said, at floridajustice.com, where you can find him as well. We're going to keep this conversation going. Give us your calls at 800-222-5222. The question remains, should we be litigating these issues on social media? I feel strongly something has to be done.
Yeah.
There's got to be some pushback. That's the Untweeted. I'm Dr. Drew. This is Midday Live at AM 790 KBC. Midday Live, AM Tweeting. Dr. Drew, number is 800-222-5222. We're talking to John M. Phillips, not to be confused with John Phillips. And John M. Phillips got the good Twitter handle, John Phillips, but it's the bad Twitter handle.
But people do confuse him with
John Phillips goes on when he goes off on a conservative topic, that's when John M. Phillips gets the crap. But when you see all that, John, doesn't it make you feel like somebody should be pushing back on this? That the limits of freedom are really sort of reached with some of the vitriol that people express to each other on these so-called social media sites? We do.
We've got to find a way generally as a society to pull back, for crying out loud.
Right.
Just because we can post something doesn't mean we should post something. And that's the lesson that it seems as if every generation or every 5 years that group is getting, and I'm not, just going to bang on millennials, but that group seems to be, more value their own opinion than ever before.
Yes.
And so, where are we in, 20 years when we're thought shooting each other?
Don't you think this is almost what Devin is doing more so than thinking about winning $250 million, is just making a point?
He is making a point, but have you seen Devin Nunes' cow's Twitter followers since he filed the lawsuit?
I have not.
It went from like a 2,000 followed or 4,000 followed account to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people following it.
Of course.
And so I think that's called, was it the Barbara Streisand effect, where she said people keep posting photos of my house, and then all of a sudden everybody knew where she lived.
Mm-hmm.
And we do see, and I have filed a lawsuit similar to this in Florida, where bullying tweets and bullying posts led to suicide.
Yeah.
And so you do see where this can go very awry with minors, with people with more fragility.
But I do want to
get the fact of a principle.
I want to get back to your question as we went to the break, which is, should we be litigating everything? I mean, no, of course not. That's the worst possible world we could possibly live in. However, I just feel like something, whether it's legislation or something, to help put some bounds around decency,
hold people accountable or something. Yeah,
something. No, John?
And I don't disagree. We've got to find some way to, I mean, is it the social platform's fault? Yeah, to some extent it is. But are they going to regulate speech And we learned, and the precedent was kind of overturned, but in all of Backpage.com and sexual trafficking, not to bring that bag of worms into this, but we learned that it's really hard to sue a social platform that's not taking a personal approach as a moderator. And that's what's going to be interesting in discovery in this case is it may open up this shadow, what is it?
Shadow banning. Shadow banning.
That's it. I want to say shadow screening, but screening. But the shadow banning stuff, does that then constitute enough moderation where they're taking an interest? Well, in the sex trafficking, Backpage got away with allowing words like Lolita and all of that to be used right up into the time where they passed new legislation. So it's this crazy world of constitutional law and First Amendment where we find ourselves again. There's a comedian, I think he's New York based, Noel Castler, who's been given it to Trump. He was on The Apprentice for 6 years, and he's got Mark Burnett's NDA, and under the guise of parody, just similar to Devin Cow, he's guising it as if it's true, but he's using his First Amendment and his right to free speech and the parody exception to really put some things out there. And so when our leader, and again, love Trump or love his brash nature, when it's all the way top down, how do we rectify it?
I don't know the answer, but we're going to have to leave it right there. Thank you, John. We'll look for you at floridajustice.com.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Right, John,
you feel better.
Thank you very much. John M. Phillips. We'll take calls after the break, 800-222-5222. That's Dan Tweeden. I'm Dr. Drew. This is Midday Live on AM 790 KBC.